Hey, welcome to Taylor's Trick-Taking Table. I'm Taylor, even though I have the haircut of Tide still from the last video. Turns out, when you cut your hair for a video, you live with it past the video. But, you know, it fits. It's nice to have a little bit of wild hair for the season that we're in. Spooky season! That's right, it's officially October in the world. And so I thought it'd be fun to wear a costume for every video this month. The game we're covering today, Gadget Trick by Kota Nakayama. The hook is players are kind of burglars, thieves who are trying to break in and steal something, but not get caught by the sensors that are guarding the thing that they're stealing. It is a last trick game. So the premise of a last trick game is the tricks before it kind of don't quite matter. It's just the last trick that matters. But you could get knocked out beforehand because of the sensors guarding the thing that you're trying to steal at the very end. The hook aside, I thought it would be fun to dress up as... Oh, I'm just realizing now. It's Catwoman that is the burglar, so I don't think this quite fits. But the only costume I could find on such short notice was a Batman costume. So I'm going to dress up as Batman. And not just, you know, the run-of-the-mill Batman that you've seen 1,000 million times, but a professional Batman, because this is a professional channel, so I brought the tie. Oh no! The tie doesn't fit! Okay, there we go. Alrighty, so let's go to the table, but first I do want to say this game, because it is a Japanese game with tons and tons of text on all of the cards. This was thankfully translated and did paste stubs for by Corey, and Corey is a fan of the channel for a while, so I want to say thank you so much, Corey. But Corey has a common complaint that I have a very messy room whenever I... sorry, I'm doing this because I can't see out of these holes unless I hold it up like that. So Corey has a complaint that I have a very messy room, and so even though I think he might be right, you could say it isn't the cleanest. Hi, that's me. I am going to right now line it up and Photoshop myself to look like I am in the cleanest room you've ever seen. Alrighty, Corey, welcome to my new room. Alrighty, let's go to the table and I'm going to teach you how to play. The deck in Gadget Trick is 6 suits, 0 through 9, and depending on the players, you're going to remove a suit or 2. Here we are setting up a game of Gadget Trick for 4 players. So before you shuffle the deck and can deal it out, you're going to be setting up kind of the heist of sorts. So the theme is players are trying to break into a location that has sensors, and they have gadgets to help them get in. It's a competitive game, so they are all thieves trying to break in. And the point of the game is to last until the last trick without getting knocked out because of the sensors, and then win the last trick, because that's how you win. It's a one-hand game. So you're going to have a deck of sensor cards. You're going to shuffle and reveal 2 of them. The third one will be revealed a little bit later. And these are going to have things that if any player pulls off, they immediately get kicked out of the hand. Like this one, for example, if any player wins 3 tricks in a row, they're out of the hand. Then you're going to shuffle these gadget cards, deal 2 out to each player. After players have seen this, they're going to pick one of the gadget cards that they want. One of them is like, oh, when you lead a trick, all the trumps are invalidated, wild. Or this one here, it's when you play cards that don't match the lead suit, so if you're off suit, then that card is treated as trump. So judging by here and judging by these, a player will pick one. So maybe Team Rocket picks that. And once all the players have picked one, you're going to simultaneously reveal. And you're going to kind of explain to everyone what you picked. And then after that, this is going to be revealed, the final sensor. Then you're going to shuffle and deal the cards out to everyone. And it's 10 cards each. You're going to be playing 9 tricks. So there's going to be one extra card left out. And then you're going to flip the top card of the undealt cards, and that is going to be the trump suit for the round. There are also going to be undealt cards, which is important because some players' gadgets have to do with the undealt cards. Like this one over here says, after trump is revealed, take any 2 cards from the deck you want, next shuffle and deal, and you are dealt 3 fewer cards. Interesting. So this player will have 9 cards exactly. So they don't have any of that leeway that I just talked about. And then finally this player here is, you're dealt an additional card before the first trick. You choose one of them, place it under this suit, and that is now a second trump suit just for you. Just for this tutorial, we're going to make this person's gadget a little bit easier. All they do is they get 2 additional cards. So we're going to do that now. This player, so they're going to get additional cards. That person's going to additional card. They're going to say, hey, this purple is actually going to be trump for me. So as you can see, there's already a little bit of wackiness that is going on. After players know what gadgets they have and what sensors are out in the middle of the table, the last player who used a weird tool or something is the start player. Let's say it's this R for Team Rocket. They are going to lead to the first trick. Just as a reminder, the sensors that are out here are, can't win 3 tricks in a row. If you acquire a number of cards less than the number of players, then you are kicked out. And also at the top of these, they sometimes have when it stops taking into effect. So for example, at the 8th trick, this one looks like it takes into effect all the time. And this last one over here, acquired cards are from 2 or fewer suits. The phrasing is a little bit tough, but essentially what it's saying is at the end of the 8 tricks, if you don't have at least 3 suits, then you're out. Because if you ever trip this wire, it's by hitting this condition by saying acquired cards are 2 or few suits. If you have 2 or fewer suits at the end of the 8th trick, you trip the wire and you get knocked out of the heist. We're just going to have it to say, when you lead, all trumps are invalidated. Wild. Now, with that out of the way, we're going to lead to the first trick. So, Team Rocket, over here, bottom right, they're going to lead to the first trick. And you can lead whatever you want. Let's say they lead this 9. So it's a must-follow game unless there's some wackiness in the gadgets or whatever it may be. And if you don't have that, you can play whatever you want. So maybe, since the players need many suits, as you can see here, since this player is out of yellow, they can play whatever they want. They are going to play this 8 of trump and hopefully try to win. So then coming to Jessie, she has to play yellow. She's going to play a low yellow. Finally coming to the ruby, maybe they played that. So highest of the trump wins. If there's other trump, like for example here, like Jessie has a purple is her trump too. So she would have played the 8 in purple. It's just later if there's ever same number. But you always keep the cards you win face out. It's important for keeping track of certain things, like how many suits you have and if you're kicked out or not. So now, as you can see, this player right here wants to make sure that they have 3 or more suits, and they have to win at least 1 more trick, because over here says acquire a number of cards less than the number of players. So they need at least 5 cards, which is less than what they have here. So they are really hopeful to at least win 1 more trick. This is probably going to work for them because, as you can see, when they lead, trump is invalidated. So they play the highest of a lead suit, so they are definitely going to win this trick. Jumping ahead, they collected their trick, and so they are good for this one because they have more than the number of players' cards. They also have 3 suits, which is great for them, but they are nervous now because they've won 2 tricks in a row, and if they win 1 more trick in a row, they get kicked out. So they're going to lead really low. They're going to lead that 0 there. It was led orange, and what would be really cool, because this rocket power is when they short suit, it's treated as trump. They could have, short suit with any of their cards here, maybe this 5 yellow, and it would have won, except, as you can see over here, when you lead, trump is invalidated. So sadly, they did not win, and actually up here, this player, the red rupee, won this trick. So play like this is going to continue until it gets to the final trick, and then whoever wins the final trick wins, if they haven't been knocked out before, or if everyone gets knocked out and there's just 1 player left, that player wins. So, for example, let's say the ruby player, they just won a trick, and maybe if they win 2 more tricks and they got knocked out, then it would just be these 3 players left. And maybe after the 8th trick, this rocket player who hasn't won a trick yet doesn't satisfy, I guess, either of these conditions, and they get knocked out. And if Jessie, who's won a bunch of tricks but only had 2 suits, they didn't get the 3 suits thing, they get knocked out. So this could end before the final trick, and then the Mind Thief down here would win. But let's say Jessie did get enough suits, and only Rocket and the Ruby got kicked out at the 8th trick. So for their very final 9th trick, then whoever wins that final 9th trick would win the game. So Jesse in this case. And that's how to play Gadget trick. Obviously there's a bunch of other wild things, like how when you lead a trick, other players must not play trump if possible, or things like if you may play trump whenever you want to. Then there's other cool censor things, like if you win a trick with the single lowest number, like for example, if you trump a low, you actually get kicked out with the censor. But this one is really wild. This one's if all the acquired cards you have form a straight of 6 or more cards, regardless of suit. So that one's really a tough one to pay attention to. Win a trick with no suit repeated. So if every suit is different in a trick and you win it, you get kicked out. A bunch of cool things. So there's a lot of cool sensors, a lot of cool gadgets, and this game has a ton of replayability. And that's how to play Gadget trick. Alrighty, so that is Gadget trick. And whew, what an interesting one. It is always kind of a gamble when I play a last trick game. So I played a fair amount. I have played the Barkside and my favorite Carrera and Gudetama, which range from meh to like not very good. I have covered some good ones though. I think Roulette Ticking Game is a fantastic one. I think it has some flaws for sure, but I think it's interesting, definitely. So where does this one slot in? I think it is more on the scale of Roulette Ticking Game. I do think it is an interesting one. Very wacky though, very bizarrely balanced, and it has just kind of a lot going on. So what's interesting is, first off, the player count is 3 to 6, and I have played at those higher player counts, and it was way too much. I think part of the game is knowing what people's gadgets are and knowing what sensors are out there and playing off that. And once you get past 4, I think, you get to the realm of there is just too much going on at the table. I think this is probably just a 3 or 4 player game, especially depending on the players at the table, if they could even handle 3 or 4. Especially because I think you just get into like a lot of suits. And the tough thing, I think these cards, and I don't know if it is because the ranks are on bottom and then it goes the suits on top, or if it's the fact that, you know, if you take one of these cards, since it is a gradient from like light to dark, if you flip them, it's a little bit strange. I don't know if that comes off on camera. And sometimes like it's hard to just see the icon and the number in low light. So I don't think the production is just on the cards is the best, but also like as an English speaker, the production where you have to translate like all of these cards is also tough. Because some of the wording, and this might just be an English to Japanese translation, so hopefully you've watched how to play, but the sensors, they say what you do to trip the sensor, but it's weird because players are trying to avoid that, right? So they have to mentally negate that, and it's super confusing sometimes. So sometimes it's like, win 3 tricks in a row. So you're like, okay, so I have to not win 3 tricks in a row. And I wish it was always just the opposite, like what you should avoid. Because I think that would help that weird, the kind of mental negating that players had to do, and it would trip them up a lot. Or, and I get why the game has to do this, but a lot of times it has to depend on like how many players at the table. It'll be like win more cards than players at the table. And I get that that depends on players getting knocked out. And so like if you need to win 5 cards because you need to win more than player count, like in a 4-player game, you need to win 5 cards. It makes sense, but like players are always doing the mental math because the words on the thing always say like do 4 times the number of players. Like it's always like a calculation. So players are like recalculating every time. I do wish, if this was my production, just to have this only work at like 3 or 4, and then just have like the cards tell you what you would need at 3 and 4 on there, or tell you what you would need to avoid, you know? I think there's just a little bit too many mental hoops that make this game that's already super wacky and super weird harder than it needs to be. Don't mean to come off right off the bat with so many critiques, because I like the game. I think it's really, really fun. I think you do need to be in for wackiness. You need to be in for the kind of goofball nature that the game lends itself to. There is so much fun in a last trick game where even though the last trick matters, the tricks before it matter just as much. So it's kind of like a last trick game, kind of in gimmick and not necessarily in function. So you see that in Roulette Ticking Game, where even though the last trick is the only one that matters in terms of like what you're betting on, you care about every trick before because that's how you bet. And that's how you kind of whittle down what card wins the last trick. Check out the roulette ticking game if you don't know what I'm talking about. Sorry for a no context reference. But I think this game does an amazing job at having that tension that players could get knocked out before they get to the last trick. And sometimes they get knocked out for having a strong hand. So you're like sloughing if you have a really good hand. And usually in like a game where you just need to win the last trick, kind of like Gudetama or whatever, that is usually great to have a really strong hand. But in this one, depending on the sensors that come out and stuff, it could be like, not the best. I think the variety of sensors is great. The variety of gadgets are great. Another small con, there is a gadget in here that is you win if you make it to the end. And in the various plays I have of this game, I found that not only does it break the game because it's super easy comparatively, but it also kind of changes the game. And it's tough when you make that statement that like, oh, something breaks the game, like in any game design or any game discussion, where especially if you've only played it a handful of times and you know the designer has probably played it way more. But every time that has come out, and I've played this, I don't know, 6 or 7 times, when it does come out, like it's come out like 4 or 5 times, because players get dealt 2 gadgets, right? And that one is just so easy and so appealing for players that they usually pick it, right? So it usually comes out in most games. And what it does is it makes everyone immediately go, okay, we have to attack this person. So the game doesn't naturally have like, oh, let's attack that person, or like, let's try to knock out this other person. It becomes like everyone has to attack this person. And it kind of breaks the flow. And also, there's some hands that like person can just get by because the sensors are more avoidance. And so it kind of ruins what I like about the game, where there's like this natural flow with the sensors and the gadgets. So what we did was we either remove that card entirely, or we made it to where if you get that one, you also have to draw another sensor that's just applied to you. And we found that not only made it more balanced and more fun, but it actually still makes it, like it's still a really strong card. Like we played 3 times, I think. So I think I've played this more than 7 times. I don't know how many times I've played it. But we played it 3 times where, yeah, when you draw that card, you get an additional sensor. And I think 2 or 3 times the person still won. So it's still really strong. It's tough. So I want to love this game so much. I think it's just a little bit rules heady, a little bit much going on at higher player counts. And I think the process to get it played is a lot of effort. But if you're willing to put in the groundwork, I really think there's something super fun to this game. The fact that you can, like, there's some gadgets, and I've been burned on this, there's some gadgets like the ones that anytime you're offsuit from the lead, it's trump for you. That is so great. I have used that one, I think 2 or 3 times, to where it lets you win the last trick pretty easily, but so many sensors are like, hey, if you win a trick where there's all different suits, you lose. Or if you win the trick with the lowest card, you lose, which is huge. And I think you can probably tell by now, if you're okay with a little bit rough for a good deal of fun, and if you're okay with wackiness, I think you're really going to like this game. There's a lot to explore and bounce off players and see, but you have to be okay with player elimination and wacky things that can happen that you don't expect, and kind of broken combos and things, and maybe a little bit of mental gymnastics to get this done, especially some translating and some paste up stuff as it is right now. But that said, I think this is a hoot. This is a great time. I think I maybe have said more disparaging things than, what's the opposite of disparaging? Asparaging things than nice things. But I do think this has always been a wonderful time. I think there's always been so many laughs. And with the right crowd, this has been such a wonderful way to end a game night, especially when it's just one hand. And you can just be like, again. This has been, of a lot of recent trick takers, the one that my group has wanted to play multiple times at the end of the night. When you're just feeling a little goofy, and you don't want to settle into like a longer trick taker, and you want to see the kind of wackiness that does come out. So yeah, that's Gadget Trick. I think I would love to see an English edition with like a ton of sensors, a ton of gadgets, and a little bit more cleaned up and polished. And I think it would be one of the better trick taking games out there. Yeah. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and happy October. All right, bye.